Our thoughts on splitting the party. I feel like we both have DM'd a lot, and we
Hmm.
both played as players a lot, and I think that there's perhaps a difference in the feeling of splitting the party versus whether or not you're the DM in the role or the player in the role.
Hmm.
So I'm just gonna make a brief overview example. Let's say as a player in the role when splitting the party happens, you can be put in a rough situation. So, for example, if
Rough is
you're
putting it polite.
yeah, if you've got one person, let's say, takes the limelight and they go and do their thing for like
The cla-
5 to 30 minutes.
the classic rogue wandering off to either rob
Yes,
something or sneak through the dungeon
that's
and
a
still
perfect
loot.
example. For the rogue player, it can be really
He
cool.
plays a lot of rogues.
Yeah, but I don't do that so much. For the rogue, it can be really cool to go and let's say you want to do the stealth mission of going and obtaining the information from the mansion that you're casing,
Hmm.
right? Or whatever it is that requires a sense of stealth that paladin and cleric clunk clunk clink clank aren't bringing to the table. You
Now,
could do
don't
it
forget the fighter. The fighter oftentimes wears heavy armor too.
exactly. So while it can be a very potent time for the rogue to shine, it can feel not great for the
As well as his buddy, the monk.
yes. It can feel not great for those who aren't good at that thing to just kind of sit in the sidelines. Mind you, as a DM, we normally will solve that by then having the fighter or whatever it goes and does something on the sidelines while this is occurring. But at a certain point, you're just creating a lot of extended time to the session just to make this possible,
Yep.
right?
Hi, Frank.
Now, as a DM, I'm just broadly discussing it before we go into it.
Hmm.
But as a DM, now you're having to play a split focus DM. So you're having to pay attention to multiple things going on at once, figuring out multiple sets of storylines at once, which is added strain on the DM as well.
Yeah.
Mind you, if you're in a shopping session, it's different. If one person doesn't want to join and go with to go to the weapon shop and they want to go to the armor shop and the other one wants to go to the weapon shop, it doesn't add too much time to play out your weapon shop and your armor shop differently without this set of players there and this set of players here. Splitting the party doesn't create any additional strain for the DM, and it's not exactly adding any length in time for the players that wasn't already going to exist because they didn't care
Hmm.
about going to that shop, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the important things in there is oftentimes when you split up the party, it becomes important for the DM to keep track of time to ensure both halves
That's true. Yes.
have fair amount of
So
time to do what they need to do, but one is not overtaking the other substantially.
absolutely. Yes, you do have to keep track of the DM.
Hmm.
I think that's a good groundwork to start from.
Hmm.
So, you've got it creates some bits of parts where players are required to have an amount of patience while
Hmm.
things are going on, where some people can get bored during those times,
Yep.
as well as it creates additional strain for the DM. But it allows certain things to shine in classes that wouldn't otherwise get to shine without it occurring. So, with that, our thoughts on splitting the party. With that laid out, what's your thoughts on splitting the party?
Well, the standard thing is never split the party, and they always hang out with each other. They bathe together, they get dressed together, they eat
You have
together.
one like long toilet that's like long horizontally.
Yeah, a long
So
toilet where
yeah,
they can all sit down
it's
on
like a
it.
trough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think in Chicago they actually have one like that. A trough urinal.
that sounds terrible. Not the trough urinal, just Chicago.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, Chicago is a rather terrifying place. Yes, but
anyways,
yeah, my thoughts are not specifically the classic, say the party never splits its situation, but I just had to make that point because some groups seriously have that belief that you should never split the party.
but you're okay with splitting the party.
I'm okay with splitting the party within reason.
One of those dreadful moments where we agree.
Yes.
Continue.
Yes. The important thing with splitting the party is that it's important when there's a lot of different things happening at the same time, or there's a potential for many things happening at the same time. So, like going through a dungeon, becomes exceedingly complicated when your party decides to split into not just half, but thirds, fourths, and fifths.
Yes. Oh my god, we've done that. We've done that recently in Matt's campaign with the whole fortress thing. Anyways,
and then it turns into a situation where the dungeon master, that pyramid underground.
Yes, the pyramid underground, where I was navigating it by like tracking everything, so I had it all straight for us. Anyways,
but that's a situation where one of those moments where we were using the obsidian. He was using obsidian to keep track
I used canvas and
place.
obsidian, so I made a bunch of connecting lines with split paths to track everyone's progression along the timeline. It made it super easy. Obsidian's awesome. Anyways, continuing.
John has already done a few videos showcasing obsidian for various purposes on the channel. Check those out.
I'll do more.
Those are very popular videos, and I thought they would be very popular videos because it's a modern DMing tool that is very much needed in the modern age.
Oh, yeah.
Not everyone is like me, where you are functionally capable of mentally keeping track of like hundreds of different sequences, roughly in order, and different splits.
Yes.
Oh, trust me, I have my weaknesses like math and a few other things. But
yes.
No one is universally good at everything. As a DM, you want to lean into the stuff that you're really strong with, and then you prepare to cover the stuff you're weak at. But going into split party, that might actually be a situation where the DM might not have the ability to effectively keep track of multiple groups going through a dungeon. And then there's also the problem of the dungeon was set up for the party itself. So you might end up with a situation where all the enemies in the dungeon are perfectly reasonable, plus or minus a few degrees is on the party's overall power.
This is why sometimes it's okay to design a dungeon that is long and windy paths with big rooms without additional sets of doorways. It's just a path.
Yeah.
Let's split the party. Where are you going to do that? Not doing that corridor. It's all one corridor.
By the way, please every so often make split paths and a few dead ends and a few extra things. They don't have to be very long, but they can also loop back or go forward or whatever. Some might be shorter.
Oh, you mean how things are actually built?
Yeah, I know. But anyways,
yes,
just one long narrow path that is a little extreme, except in some rare occasions in which it should make sense as long as you don't do it constantly.
In the dungeon, do you have issue with your players splitting the party?
I don't have a huge issue. Remember,
what about one player splits off and accidentally walks into the boss fight?
That player, the way I run games, I usually try to let players have an opportunity to interact with creatures depending on the intelligence of the creature. And we had something similar to this in like Cragmaw Castle when I was running that.
Yes.
Where the party
I do recall that. I believe I was the one interacting with the big bad in that situation.
Your turtle.
Yes.
And you went in there and you got into a conversation with him while the rest of the party was outside of the room waiting for the meeting to be done. But also you were trying to figure out how to find the half of the original party that came in.
Yep.
That you guys were playing before, because
half the party like died or was imprisoned.
Yeah, and they were put into a cellar. Incidentally, I made that whole second basement level.
So
up.
Playing off that, you're okay with it.
Yeah.
But as a DM, it's because you build things in such a way that they inherently aren't going to trigger a scene where they instantly die by going in it alone.
Unless you
foreshadow it really.
There's foreshadowing, but there's also sometimes when You just literally have a situation
Where
where
you chose to walk into the dragon's
Yeah.
lair. That's on you.
yeah. So it's very important as a dungeon master to never do the exact same thing over and over again, and vary it a little bit, so it keeps fresh to the players.
So, what about that's for you speaking on the topic of in dungeon. You're okay with it. What about the topic of in town?
In
How
town,
do you feel about splitting
I'm
the party?
absolutely fine with people both splitting up in town. But weirdly enough, most of the time when I run towns, people don't typically split up. They
Okay.
hang out with each other.
Now,
And I guess that's usually
now
because
let's look at it.
That's usually because I seem to ambush the party with various events and stuff like that.
Okay, so let's hold there, and I'm gonna go jump to my ideas. And mind you, this is from the DM perspective for both of these right now. So for me, when it comes to a dungeon, as a DM, I'm not gonna stop players from splitting up, but if what they're trying to do would inherently probably kill their player, I am going to tell them. And like even if it's above the table talk, I'm gonna explain like, hey, the actions that you're doing, the
Kill
consequences
the player.
probably
Do you have explosives built into the seats of your chairs?
maybe the consequence is probably death for your player character.
Okay, you forgot the word character in there, so I started wondering.
Look,
whether you
sometimes your
put
players,
shock pads in the
sometimes
chairs.
your players need to die.
But yeah,
Their characters are okay, but anyways,
you can use the characters later for another group.
exactly. So no, I'm okay with splitting in dungeon, and I try to let it just let it ride when it's not going to create a giant detriment, and I try to heavily either foreshadow or above table talk explain that this action, the consequence is probably death.
And it's important for the dungeon master to explicitly state, this is above table. This is DM two players.
Yeah. I'm letting you know this is probably going to get you killed.
This is a high danger situation.
Yeah. Then it's up to them. If they want to do it, fuck it. Hands off the keyboard.
Yep.
Let it ride. That's up to you, right?
By the way, the classic line, if you don't want to be so explicit, is, "Are you sure?
Are you sure about that?
Are you sure? Is that your final answer?" Do 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 do. We should probably just do the chime.
Yeah.
For...
Yeah. In town, I don't mind it, but I feel like depending what it is, it can add a lot of time into a session.
There's inherent switching time. Whenever you switch from one group to another, you have to reestablish what's going on and then continue forward.
Especially if let's say, if for some reason you have, let's take the analogy of the armor shop, weapon shop, right? If you've got player A and player B, player A wants to go armor shop, player B wants to go weapon shop, right? If player A goes to his armor shop and player B goes to his weapon shop, and then they both meet up and they go to the tavern afterwards, and then player B all of a sudden decides, oh, player A got some cool armor, I'm going to go stop at the armor shop, and now player B, so on and so forth. They end up going and traversing back and hitting up the same shops that the other one just hit, and now you've doubled the time. And mind you,
I've seen that happen.
If it happens to one shop, you're doubling the time. If it's happening to multiple shops, you're basically making the entire session a shopping session of hitting the exact same shops multiple times. And they'll even be questioning the shopkeep on things and so on and so forth. You're adding so much time by splitting the party, whereas if you all just stayed as one congruent party, you would cut down the time to like a third. So in some situations, for me as a DM, it can be very annoying if you all split and now my entire session gets eaten by shop.
Small mini note. Sometimes, depending on the group and the DM, they're perfectly fine with an entire session being shopping.
That's true. I, as a DM, depending what it is, I might, if you walk into a shop, I might just really mitigate this and drop it down to, all right, what is it you're trying to buy? Tell me those things. All right, they do have this, don't have this, do have this. What's its average price? Oh, it's 20 gold. Yeah, you can get it depending on the shop. Oh, you can get it for 18. Oh, you can get it for at cost, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Oh, you wanted to haggle? All right, let's roll it real quick. Blah, 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 right? Quick to the point. Sometimes I'll do trading like that. Sometimes the whole talking encounter. It varies. It depends on how punchy I'm trying to make that session.
Mm-hmm.
If I've got like a really loaded back end where I have a full boss fight, yeah, I'm gonna speed through. That's a hint towards
But-
my campaigns. If you notice me really zoom through
Mm-hmm.
when we've got like a shop, it's because I have something planned later and I need all
Oh,
of
I know,
that.
because your current Rifts campaign is set up as one shots in a string.
To an extent,
Yeah.
yes.
Because each little adventure is designed to be within a session.
It's either in a session or in multiple sessions.
Yeah.
A rift could end up being like a 2-3 session thing.
I figured that would be a thing, but I do like the fact that a lot of them are self-contained in a single
Yes.
session. So if a player misses, they only just miss that at Rift, if did not a whole bunch of other stuff.
Exactly.
And they don't come in like halfway into one or something like that. But that does happen, by the way.
Exactly. Anyways.
I would think the Rifts campaign actually would be a very good book.
Oh, probably.
Because that would be a really fun one. And you go through it, run it, and I come up with my own version of it and run it, and we probably could combine it together into a nice tome.
I could do some videos on the rift campaign. Anyways, so that's my from DM perspective in dungeon, in town. In dungeon, I'm okay with it. I'll try and make it really clear if it's about to cause a major issue. In town, I'm fine with it, but I will get frustrated if it ends up creating an amount of overlap that eats into all the time of the session, disallowing the other things that I had planned. Not that I have a certain amount of things that I want to get through in the session, but there is a general amount of things that I would like to see accomplished. Not that it's like a railroad, but like if the entire session is you went to 3 shops, that feels bad from a player perspective and a DM perspective, depending on what you're interested in.
Yep.
So
I think I covered pretty much all my dungeon right there. But my perspective on the DM on the city side is that when it comes to the city or it comes to any adventure, I personally don't worry about trying to do as many things in a session as long as as long as players are moving forward on something or doing something. I'm perfectly fine. I'm fine with people just literally having an entire session being shopping session.
If that's what they want to do, that's okay.
Or a traveling adventuring beach session or something like that. Or a combat session. Hi, Athena.
There's a lot of times where I don't concern myself with that time crunch of it. Example, even today, there was a good portion of time where I just, as a DM, I just shut up. Because the players are in their location doing their thing. They're RPing. They're figuring out what they want to do. I'm not going to ask them the question of, hey, what do you want to do? And even when they hit like a stopping point, I'm just going to let it ride because this is their moment to decide what they're doing. I'm not pushing the agenda, pushing the topic.
Mm-hmm.
All right, as a player.
What's
your thoughts on splitting the party?
When the party splits, I actually hate it.
Let's split it. Let's split it into dungeon and into in city.
I hate it both ways.
All right, reasons in dungeon.
It basically it turns into a lot of long waiting.
That's true.
Yeah.
It does do that.
It kind of sucks as a player because unlike a dungeon master who is constantly acting off the players and keeping busy, when you're a player, you end up just a lot of sitting there. And for me, basically sitting there results in like almost falling asleep.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't like watching some live plays for tabletop role-playing games because The ones that are a little too slow paced or a lot of talking, say like Critical Role,
Yeah.
bore the snot out of me, and I just basically go into sleep mode.
Yeah.
So
All right.
I just kind of ignore those things.
Let's hit your in town. I'm sure it's roughly the same.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. As a player, I do not like it when people split up into a dozen different groups, and it just takes forever for anything to happen.
Okay, so then I'm gonna hit my end of it. So in a dungeon, I don't like it unless I do. Let me explain. I don't like it in a dungeon unless you make it short and snappy and it's interesting and it pulls some kind of usefulness. Example, if you make it this, okay, let's take the rogue example.
Mm-hmm.
The rogue going ahead in the dungeon to go and scout an area.
Scout an area.
And then you make it into a stealth and then like an investigation and whatnot. And then you've now gauged what's in the room up ahead.
Mm-hmm.
If you've caught on to, okay, there's a trap over here. This person's located over here. There's potentially explosive barrels over right here. It's hard to say. And there's a fireplace over here.
Explosive barrels?
Sure, why not? There's a fireplace over here that you could go and knock into this cooking oil and create this giant hazard, right? And now they come back and it's this useful information for the party, and now you've accomplished something through it, and it's the entire party is like, ooh, explosive barrels, right? If you've now pulled in useful information that's also an interesting thing that everyone can make use of, okay, that's cool. That's fun for everyone. Even if you're not the one doing the thing, you can now work with that, right? But if it's like the rogue snuck off and had some like 20-minute exposition where they were talking to the leader of the thieves guild that they grew up with for their storyline, yeah, that's cool for the player, but now you on the other end you're like 20 minutes deep, and then he comes back and he's this dark brooding rogue that's not even going to talk about what just occurred, and you're just half falling asleep because it's all of this story that, yes, it's cool, but like you're not involved, right?
Yeah.
So it's cool when done right in a short and snappy way that everyone can get involved in, but if you're just leading one player into it and everyone else just can go twiddle their thumbs, that sucks. Okay. In town. I don't like it. I don't like splitting the party. I don't think that in town you get a lot of value from it. I think that, yes, it makes sense for certain players to, I don't want to go to the weapon shop. I personally think that those should just be played out as, a lot of the time, that person's standing outside because he didn't want to go inside. And then the rest of the party goes in, and then they continue on. Because the game just flows faster. And then you can go and do things that aren't just, alright, It sucks when you go up to a shop and then there's a 20-minute talking scene that yields no main quest information, and all it yielded was someone bought a dagger.
Or drugs in my campaigns and adventures.
Yeah. It's funny when it's like a talking scene and there's a lot of back and forth. It can be interesting and comical, the back and forth, but I suppose for me I'm more towards the story progression and not all of those. There's the difference between little intricate moments, especially ones that are bullshit, and ones that are, it's just like, okay, get on with it. All right, come on, let's move it forward. I mean, have you hit moments where DMs go like 15 minutes into RP explaining something, and it's just like, all right, you have lost me.
Yes, it has happened multiple times.
And it's so much worse when you're not even involved as a player and it's just for a different player's character. Which, yeah, there's an amount of selfishness there inherently. because maybe the person isn't interested in the other person's character. They're just interested in what's going on in their own character's backstory or whatever, or lore. But that's just kind of like, I'm going to be inherently true to a lot of people.
Probably the hardest for me when it comes to well, the kind of wasted when you split the party sessions or something like that is sometimes the kind of the wandering and explaining the environment in the world way too much.
Yes.
For each group.
Yes.
That can get drag on a bit.
Yeah. Yep. The descriptions of things can end up eating half the session.
Yeah.
All right. I suppose that's the majority of my opinions on splitting the party. As a DM, it can be acceptable and fine, but as a player, I'm generally against it unless it's made snappy, punchy, real quick, and it's accomplishing something that everyone gets a benefit and a tangible enjoyment out of.
That's the important rule for any DM to keep in mind is that as a DM, you're always interacting with the party, either one or multiple people in the party. So you're busy, you might not be bored, but you could still have a situation where even in spite you're really busy, you could still have over half your party doing nothing, being bored.
Yeah.
Because you're spending way too much time focused on one person over here or this mini adventure the two other players have spiraled off into, and that can actually drag down a game substantially. The potential of this increases as your groups grow in size. If you have a party of like 4 people, these become much smaller excursions,
which goes into why goes into why I like a party of like 3 people.
Yeah, 3 to 4 people is a really nice area, because it's very quick turnaround on between players. Each player gets a large chunk of time of interaction.
Yep.
When you get into the critical role size groups where you have like 7, 8, 9 people, you end up with a lot of players not doing something for a long period of time. And if they happen to split up the party like 2 or 3 or 4 sections, you might literally go through like 6 hours of just going only through 2 groups of the 3 groups in the party.
Yeah.
So, I
think we share a lot of the same values when it comes to splitting the party.
It's one of those things that's born out from experience.
Yeah.
We both play and we both DM, and you end up learning some things suck more as a DM and some things suck more as a player.
Splitting the party to me sucks more as a player.
Yeah.
Would you ever disallow someone from splitting the party? If that's something that they're trying to do. Let's say you've got that rogue that wants to go off on that stealth mission. Are you ever going to say, no, I don't want you to do that because it's going to make for a worse story? As a DM or as a player?
As a player, I would just simply remind people, hey, it's dangerous to split the party. As a DM, I would do kind of the above the board thing, or the are you sure you want to do that thing. I personally don't try to forbid any players from
doing an action.
Or going off on a tangent like that, because I don't want to overly restrict them, but I will remind the players that if you do choose to say, as the ranger to chase down a owlbear you just injured out in the woods or something by yourself without the party's help, and the party is trying to help the people on the carriage back to town, you have a high probability of dying.
Yes.
Particularly if you're in a dungeon.
In town, the opposite there. For me, I would never disallow someone from splitting. Like if someone wants to go and hit the apothecary, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I will, as a DM, always gauge interest of okay, who all wants to join in for that shop. Because if at that point it sounds like we're hitting like 3 or 4 different shops, I'm just going to one by one go through the shops. Okay, who wants to be present for this one? Who wants to be present for this one? So on and so forth.
Yep. I do agree. It's good to find out who wants to be at what shops, and then decide whether that should just be. You go to shop A, and then the whole group goes to shop B or C, because there's a large portion of mixed individuals between the groups who want to go to different, all the same shops.
Yep.
But not all the shops.
Yep.
So you just send the whole group through the whole thing.
Yeah, send them through the gauntlet. Whoever wants to be present for that one can
Yeah.
be.
Or they could split up and go into two different directions, in which case is you at least then know who wants to be at which one.
Yeah. All right. I think that's the summary for me for splitting the party. I'm good with the idea. I'm never gonna stop someone from doing it. I generally disfavorable thing for me. Not a huge fan.
I typically, as I'm in the same territory, I don't stop players from splitting parties. Sometimes it actually comes into really amazing moments where a character has a golden moment to shine.
Yes, that is the
Or-
key point. I'm a huge fan of those.
Or they get their butt beaten inside out, or they get killed. Their character drops because they went and chose a bad thing, and it's a learning lesson for the player, but also an elimination of the character or for that moment. And truly, most DMs don't want to have a character die for a dumb reason.
I don't know. Have you
But
met
some-
some of people's characters?
But sometimes, as a DM, you kind of just have to let players sacrifice their character to the altar of dumb decisions.
Well, he hasn't been enjoying a wizard. I'm sure he'll enjoy something else. Yeah, you sacrifice your soul.
That's a warlock.
Yeah, why not? Well, now they've multi-classed.
Oh.
Anyways, that's my thoughts on splitting the party.
Yep. Incidentally, I think we have one of our newer players who's been playing for a short while. Well, as he said, it is not excited about his necromancer wizard, and
He might be killing it off. We'll see.
be killing it off at some point in the future. But of course, he's also at that level where if he's just a few more levels up higher,
He'll be able to
spells.
actually do. Yeah, these
So-
wizard things. All right. This has been John with Tabletop Wisdom,
And Jason with Tabletop Wisdom. And don't forget to check out our videos, our playlists. We have a variety of stuff. Feel free to leave any comments or suggestions of what topics you're interested in. And have a delightful day, a nice, wonderful weekend, a magnificent month.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.